everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown. And today I want to look at a little disagreement between two YouTube channels. We have the behavior panel over here. We have deception detective over here. And I also want to bring in my own thoughts on a bunch of cases which there's disagreements on as to guilt, innocence, and how you perceive the people who you are analyzing. What are you actually analyzing also? Are you analyzing their statements? Are you analyzing their body language? What is it you're analyzing? And what will give you the most, the best, shall we say, analysis of the situation? Or if you only look this direction, do you miss a whole bunch of stuff that's over here? So anyway, before I get going, this is an educational channel. Please do support the channel by subscribing to the channel. Check my playlist for all the stuff that's on there, any of the cases you might be interested in. And if you'd like to support further, please click the link and join Patreon. Okay, that is all I'm going to say about that. Let's go to this. Now, it's, we don't always agree on everything. This is a simple fact. And it's okay not to agree, as long as we explain where we're coming from and how we're coming to our analysis. As far as a criminal profiler goes, I've said this over and over again. Criminal profiling belongs actually in a fresh investigation. It should be there in the first 48. A profiler should be embedded in the detective team, or the detectives should be trained in profiling themselves. Why? Because it's not like when you come to you give an analysis as a profiler that this is absolutely what it is. No, the purpose of profiling and analyzing crime scene evidence is to forward a case, to find the best avenues so you don't waste a lot of time looking the wrong direction, so you can get to the maybe the right person soon enough that you can find the clothes he hasn't thrown away yet, or find blood evidence or whatever, because you just don't want to waste time. So the better the analysis in the first 48, the sooner you can maybe catch the guy that committed the crime. Now, in the United States, profilers are not embedded in police departments, which is a shame. I think South Africa has some of that, and detectives do not get the training I would like them to get. It's one reason I have my channel now. I'm hoping that more detectives will watch this channel. More people will be interested in understanding how to analyze. Okay? But it's part of the investigative, generally speaking, should be part of the investigative side of things, and not so much something we just come out and pronounce later on and say, see, this is what I think and I'm right. It should be something that, depending on what evidence comes in, what more evidence comes in, you might say, hey, now that I know this, I would lean this direction. But I'm on YouTube, they're on YouTube, and we all have ways of teaching, essentially, that we want people to understand how things work and what is more likely to be true than not. But we have different methodologies. So anyway, in this particular instance, we had a little tussle between the behavior panel and deception detective. Now, what happened here? All right. Well, maybe I should just be straight up honest to begin with. I lean much more toward deception detectives' methodologies than I do the behavior panel. I've had a lot of trouble with their analyses. I find them also often very cautious about actually saying what is true, like, hey, Chris Watts is a psychopath. If you all don't know that Chris Watts is a psychopath, a man who just ups and murders his wife and little children just because he's tired of them, you should be able to say that. I don't know why you have sympathy toward people like Casey Anthony and you think your father really did do something in the pool with Kaylee. Casey Anthony premeditatedly killed that child by putting duct tape over her so she couldn't breathe, left her in her trunk, and went on about her partying business. That woman should have been convicted, except for Jose Baez and a jury that didn't get it. And apparently you don't either. The Mccanns, deception detective and I are on the same page of the Mccanns as well. We both think that the Mccanns are likely involved in what happened to their daughter. They don't think so. It makes me very curious. And then, so, and one of the problems I find here is that there is a ton of evidence out on the Mccanns, evidence that they apparently have not spent a lot of time analyzing. I've written a book on it. I'm going to do another video in just in the near future on it. I've been over to Portugal and spent time with Gonçalo Amaral, and we were going to write a book together, but publishers wouldn't touch it because we both think the Mccanns have something to do with it, and there is no abductor like Christian Bruckner. And you can check out my videos. This is the very first one I did 3 years ago, and there's a bunch more, but I will be putting out a new one. And so Deception Detector looked at he very much analyzed their statements. And he came up with, he thinks there was that they had something to do with it. They analyzed them and came up with them being innocent, and that's an abduction. I got issues with that. I mean, I can't even figure out how they came there. But again, sometimes we disagree. But I am concerned that they're having trouble with the word psychopath. That if you're going to be a person, you're going to analyze the way you're analyzing. Why are you so chicken to ever say that word? And, and I'm going to tell you why, because it's safer. I think the behavior panel kind of pussyfoots around things and says interesting things, but nothing that is going to get them in trouble. And after they did the Wells interview on Dr. Phil, so that's what they did. So this is the video that Deceptive Detective did called "How to Catch a Psychopath," and he's talking about the signs of a psychopath, and this is part of the show too. He's showing clips of Dr. Phil, and then on there were two of the behavior panels. Scott Rouse was there, body language expert, and I'm with Deceptive Detective on this. I'm not huge on body language because I think, like he's going to say, I'll show you in a minute, psychopaths can fake pretty good body language. And also Greg Hartley was their human behavior consultant, and they came on and to Dr. Phil's show, and they supposedly they were supposed to call it interviewed the parents of Summer Wells, and no, they interrogated. They absolutely interrogated, and it's a really strange show because theoretically the parents are coming on to encourage people to look for their missing abducted daughter. Yet they're going on a show which has two behavioral experts who are basically gunning for them. Now, in the long run, they basically said, well, they had some issues, but we don't think they had anything to do with it. And I'm like, what? And Deception Detective is going, what? Well, that's interesting. What? All right. And I also want to say, just to again be very clear about myself, Dr. Phil, in my personal opinion, is borderlining the narcissism / psychopathy line there, because I've only done a show once, and I watched him exhibit horrific behavior toward guests in the most foul and disgusting way I've ever seen in my life. And then when I came on the show, I came on in the beginning, and I was introduced, Pat Brown, criminal profiler, and I gave a whole thing on, I think it was school mass murder, can't remember now. And then I was part of a panel, and then that was a part of the show I did. When I saw the show after I got home, the whole introduction with me in it, my name and everything was gone. I appeared in the middle of this panel without, I don't even know if there was an introduction. I just said something during the panel, very little. And then at the end of the show, Dr. Phil basically said every single thing I said at the beginning of the show. He basically plagiarized. And after that experience, I never went back. And when they called me, I said, I'll never come back to your show again. And I personally think Dr. Phil is a despicable human being. I'm just going to say that up front. And I think he's the most manipulative. I'm going to do what the behavior panel does. I have some concerns, but maybe he's a nice guy. Anyway, let me get to what happened here with Deception Detector. So he did this show, and during the show, that he was doing. He watched what the two from the behavior panel were getting out of the Candus and Don, and he was watching their reactions and what they were doing, and he gave a lot of good stuff. And he gave these foretells of a psychopath. He believes that Don Wells exhibits psychopathy, and he says there are 4 things that are about psychopaths that are tells for people, so that when you run into this, because most of us aren't going to be doing investigating. Most of us are going to be living life, and we're going to be running into people who exhibit these behaviors. And wouldn't it be nice to know what they are, so we can maybe take a few steps back? So he said, the problem with a lot of the face and body language stuff that comes across well to some of the people on the behavior panel is that psychopaths are convincing with that face and body language. They're convincing. So now we have a problem. You're going to use that, yet the psychopath is good at that, which is why they sometimes can pass a polygraph. Deception detective feels that Don shows that ability to come across that way. He feels that Candus does not. I tend to agree with him on that. I find him a controlling person, and I find her a big fat mess. And I find this is very also true with the Mccanns. When the Mccanns have gone on camera over and over and over and over again, Jerry Mccann, the father of Madeline Mccann, is like him, very controlling. He's the one that he's scripting everything. And Kate is like Candus, only we're talking a different lifestyle, shall we say, because the Mccanns are doctors and these people are not. So McCann's lifestyle is much more upper middle class lifestyle, and theirs is much more of a lower middle class lifestyle, going down to actually quite poor. So 2 different lifestyles. But in reality, Kate, I believe, is controlled by Jerry, and I believe Candus is controlled by Don. Why they're being controlled is a whole nother question. I'll get to that in a little bit, but I want to stay with right now these signs. So deception detective says convincing face and body language, that they can get away with that. And I agree with that. Duper's delight, that when they are getting away with it, they go, because it's so much fun. Psychopaths love to lie. They love to tell you a story and watch you. And if you fall for it, that's really cool. So a lot of times I got Duper's delight. They're like, he shows that, she doesn't. Same thing, Jerry and Kate Mccann. Oh my goodness. Jerry Mccann has that, sometimes he has that little snicker he does, and you could see it in him. And Kate Mccann just looks stressed. Bold stories, but lack emotion and relationship details. Oh, absolutely. A lot of times a psychopath, what they'll do, let's say they're late for work. They will say something like, not like I overslept and there was traffic, but I was driving to work and I saw this car off the side of the road and there was a pregnant woman drowning in a river. And so I got out and I saved her. What? Didn't appear on the news, but but they tell that with a straight face, but also no emotion. Like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I saw this woman, she was because they don't feel that. They're making it up too, but also they don't have those type of emotions or empathy. So when they create a story, it's a bold story, but they're not really involved in it with emotion or talking about, just, you don't feel the connection in there, but it's a bold story. Struggles face to face. This is an interesting one. This is where the detective can win. If you're bringing a psychopath in and you know what kind of person you're dealing with, a lot of times, if they're face to face and things are going like this, it gets a little more difficult for them to deal with that. But if they can put on an act, if they can make a presentation, they're better at that. Okay, so these are 4 tells that deception detective would like people to know that can signal to people that you might be dealing with a psychopath. The response from the behavior panel was this: those signs of a psychopath were horribly misleading and untrue. No, they weren't, but okay. There's a great checklist from Dr. Robert Hare that contains the full list of psychopathy conditions. This is true. Robert Hare, I use it all the time. It is a checklist for psychopathy. And it includes, interesting, body language is not part of it. Okay. Behavior panel. When they talk about behaviors, they're just talking about face and body stuff more than they're talking about their actual behaviors. Okay. But these checklists will add in all those behaviors that the person actually does that lets you know something is not quite right. All right. And I want to refer to something from the Madeline Mccann case because let me see if I can find this one here. This was an interesting one that deception detective pointed out. He said that Don wasn't curious about anyone that he knows could have done something. In other words, supposedly his daughter disappears while he's not even there. He doesn't say to his wife, hey, what happened? Hey, did you do something to her? He doesn't ask if his boys did something, the neighbor did something, grandma did something. He's not interested. Why isn't he interested? Because he likely knows what happened. That's the problem. Kate Mccann wrote in her book, well, let me put it this way. When Madeline Mccann first went missing, there were two people who had sightings. This is Madeline Mccann back in Portugal and prior to Luge. I'm not going to go into the whole story. If you've been around our channels, you probably hear the Madeline Mccann story over and over. If you don't know, go to my link and check all my Madeline Mccann videos out. However, and check out Deception Detectives one. It's really good. You can also check out the behavior panel, but they seem to think they have nothing to do with anything and it was an abduction. Although there's no evidence of that. But anyway, of the abduction. Now, when Madeline went missing, there were two sightings. One was by their friend Jane, and the other one was by a whole family called the Smith family. They were about 45 minutes apart. So while Jerry was outside chit-chatting with a friend called Jez outside of the vacation flat, Jane, his friend, said as she was coming up the little teeny street, she saw a man carrying a little girl away. And didn't bother to tell the Mccanns right away, even after they found their daughter was missing. Apparently she didn't get around to telling them for quite a while, which would have been useful considering maybe they would want to go that direction and save their child. But Jane just didn't want to bother them. Anyway, about 45 minutes later, when Jerry no longer had an alibi talking to Jez, the Smith family saw a man walking toward the beach with a little girl in his arms. What was so interesting about this, the Mccanns were not interested in the Smith sighting. They only were interested in Jane's sighting. Only. The Smith sighting, they ignored that for the longest darn time. And when Kate finally wrote her book, she said, well, it could have been the Smith sighting, but only if it was the same guy that Jane saw. He suddenly ducked into an alley and went a different direction 45 minutes later? I don't think so. I'm not sure it was 45 minutes later. Was it 20, 30 minutes later? It's been a while. I forgot my times on that. But anyway, I don't edit my videos. You get what you get. So anyway, if you go back to my original video, you'll get the details on that. But why would they ignore that? And this is what Deception Detective points out. When your child goes missing, you will suspect everybody, because you want to find your child. So he should have been all over his neighbors, talking to everybody, trying to find out who took his kid. But he wasn't that interested. The Mccanns were not interested in the Smith sighting. Why? Why would they not? My God, maybe Jane saw something else, which now supposedly she saw an innocent man carrying his child, a tourist carrying his child back to his vacation flat, supposedly. So it would have been the Smith sighting, but they weren't interested. Why not? Probably because they know exactly who the Smith guy was, which many people think is Jerry Mccann carrying his own daughter away. So they ignored that, purposely ignored that. That is an interesting sign of what a guilty parent will do and not an innocent parent. Another thing he points out is that over time, guilty parents, when they get away with it, the time starts and getting longer and longer. You're getting away with it. They get more confidence, like, hey, they're never going to figure it out. And they get more relaxed and bolder. Innocent parents, when the time lengthens, they fall apart completely, because then they think, oh my God, my child is gone. My child is never coming back. They get more and more despondent, and their lives fall apart completely. So those are very, very interesting points. So this concept, the behavior panel, even though they interrogated them, got some very interesting stuff. They seem to just go after the fact. Whereas deception detective says, I see deception and I see a problem here, that there's a lack of innocence here. He points more to Don. Now, the only thing I'm going to disagree with here, as they say, we don't always agree. Deception detective kind of leans toward selling the child, which has been, I think, a kind of a weird concept out there in the internet world. I did this. I'll link all of these in the description. Candus Wells and the Cornbread Mafia, because during the show they asked about this cornbread mafia, and this was not even this was some drug dealers in another state at another time. It has nothing to do with this case. So the concept that they sold Candus off for drugs. I'm sorry, Summer off for drugs. Maybe they should have sold her off for drugs, but all right. I don't think she's a very good mother, but okay. Summer. Sold Summer for drugs or a drug debt. I personally don't buy it. I think that's unlikely. First of all, Don, he has been in and out of prison. I didn't see all the charges, but he's been in there for DUIs and for some other crimes, and drugs were seemed to be part of it. I couldn't find great details on that. The family's kind of a mess. And he's got rather a criminal nature, shall we say. Perhaps psychopathic nature, but criminal. Now, could he have been involved in drug deals that went bad? I guess. However, usually when people sell off a child, actually they rent their children. That's more useful. In other words, hey, I can't pay for that, but you can have sex with my daughter. And then hey, oh, that's cool. Okay, I'll drop off a few $100s or whatever. Or you can rent your child out a lot to make money. But actually selling your child, does it happen? Yes, but usually in the circumstances where nobody's going to find out. In other words, let's say you're a bunch of drug users, you're living in some kind of motel someplace, some rural area or whatever, and you're doing whatever, meth and a whole bunch of crap, and your kid is there, and you need meth desperately, so you say, take my kid. Okay, give me that stuff, take the kid. And the police don't even know about it for like a couple of years later. Somebody goes, whatever happened to that woman and her child? Or some grandmother shows up from someplace and doesn't know where her grandkid went to, but haven't seen them in 3 or 4 years. Those people can sell a child in the sense that nobody's looking for the child or is going to notice a child is missing. And they're in desperate states because they're so drugged up and all that crap. They can just, generally speaking, that's more likely. In this case, he's a working man. And he could be doing some stuff on the side, but when Summer went missing, the police were involved right away. And you don't want to sell your kid and then have the police roll right in. I mean, there's going to be connections, and there's been no connections have been found to any major drug deals, or that he had to pay off a drug deal by getting rid of his kid. And then what? Where is the kid? I mean, is she in some supposed child sex ring, which is not the way things really work in the United States very often. And please don't start telling me, oh, Pat, you just obviously don't understand how things work. No, I do. And there are many countries where child sex rings are very, very strong, where kids do get kidnapped or sold into them. Very poverty-stricken countries. You'll see this in India, Thailand, places where there's very, very, very much poverty, and they can get away with it because of the police situation is not strongest as far as tracking this stuff down. So kids are sold into sex slavery or kidnapped into sex slavery. This does not much happen in this country, except for some, if people are coming in across the border, there are those who are sort of sold as they're crossing before they cross the border till after they get over the border, and are usually it's teens and young adults, not 6 and 7-year-olds. But anyway, I don't want to get into all that, but I don't see any real links to that. What I do see is a very similar situation to the Mccanns. Again, we got a controlling man and a kind of a woman who's under his foot, who will do pretty much what he says, because whatever he's telling her, he's saying, hey, this is the way it's got to be. She didn't want to do this thing with Dr. Phil, and I don't blame her. And these two guys, because these two guys weren't there to, supposedly they were there to quiz them and help eliminate them as suspects so that people will go on and look for Summer. It sounds like nonsense. For a guy who might be a psychopath like Deception Detective believes, he's probably bold enough to say, we can go on there and we'll just convince them and that'll end that. Besides, I get to be on Dr. Phil. And she's like, I don't want to do it. And he goes, look, all you got to do is say, no, 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 no. Just do what I tell you. And that's what it looked like. We also see the same thing with Jerry and Kate Mccann. Jerry is the strong one, and Kate is the one that seems like she is trying to say the right things. And if she doesn't, Jerry looks over at her and is like, get your act together. And everything is practiced before they go do it. What happened in the Mccann case? The evidence points to that while they were out drinking with their friends at the tapas restaurant, either one of two things happened. Either they over-medicated their children so they'd stay asleep so they could be out longer, or Madeline got into some medicine. Whatever happened, the evidence supports Madeline died in the apartment, likely of an accidental overdose of medication and possibly positional asphyxiation of falling off the couch. And there's not absolute proof on that, but there's interesting stuff. And the cadaver dog and the blood dog that hit on behind the couch. But this would have been an accidental death covered up for the purposes of, oh my God, if we don't cover this up, we're all going to go down. We're going to get arrested. The kids are going to be taken away. And Jerry being the strong one and the one who might be closer to psychopathy, because I've seen a lot of those same things Deception Detective is talking about in Jerry Mccann. He would be controlling things, and Kate is going along with the program because she's now desperate too, and he's telling her what to do. Like, I think this relationship is. And I think to me, we see a whole scenario of Summer's out for the day with Candus, and they seem to be having fun. Some people think she died during the day. I don't think so. I think she did get home. Grandma was there. They were all there. The boys were in the house. And then Summer went running in the house and went down in that little horrifying basement room, which was a complete disaster. Everything is a disaster in the house. So that they were careful and all that stuff they were slobs and careless, and God knows what was in that basement. But I believe something happened to Summer when she went down in the basement. And then once that happened and she found her daughter gone, as she puts it, the same way that Mccann said their daughter was gone. Gone from what? Gone because she was taken, or gone because she got into something and died. And then I think Don took over what to do about the situation. So I see a very much of a similarity between the two. I don't see abduction in either case, nor selling of children, which is also believed sometimes in the Madeline Mccann case. And I don't believe that's true either. I think they liked their kid. I just think they were parents who had issues, the Wells. I think they had a lot of issues between the two of them with drug problems and other stuff like that going on, and poor handling of the kids, which is why they shouldn't have probably been in their custody. But I don't see any selling of children. I don't see that with the Mccanns either. I see poor decision making and arrogance, and so that's where I come in on it. So yes, you can, if you check out. And then the Chris Watts thing. Just to let you know, I also have the Chris Watts video, and this is my Madeline Mccann. This is my Summer Wells video, and this is my one about the cornbread mafia, which I don't believe exists or anybody was sold. But I will link some of those below. And I like the way Deception Detective very calmly picks apart things, and I think he points out the most important things that to me have mostly rung true. I mean, I'm in a great agreement in a lot of his analysis of the different statements. And he's more for statement analysis, and I'm more for statement analysis than for just body and face stuff. Statements are very interesting. Those are words that come out of our mouths, and I'm a big statement analysis supporter. I do statement analysis in a different way than Deception Detective. I also like Peter Hyatt's statement analysis. I do red flag statement analysis. That's what I call it. I don't pick apart every word, because I think sometimes certain words, I think you can get too obsessed with them. I know Peter Hyatt once, I think he was talking about door in one of the cases, meaning possible sexual like a child who's being sexually assaulted at home, sexual abuse of some sort. Sometimes I say, hey, a door might just be a door, and there was the issue about, in the Mccann case, I think, deception detector, I don't know if you brought this one up, about saying when they use the word well, like, was her body in a well? I don't believe her body's in a well. I've picked out a place I think is most likely that she was buried. I believe that they'd be most likely buried and not just tossed into the sea or tossed into a well, knowing what I do about the Mccanns. So sometimes a well is just, well, doesn't mean an actual well. But the people believe this is leakage, and I'm not as fond of leakage as Peter Hyatt and Deception Detective are, but it's interesting to consider. I'm for red flag stuff where I go, whoa, 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 whoa. You said what? And one of my favorite cases where a young man found his mother dead in her boyfriend's apartment, stabbed to death, tried to give her CPR, blah, blah, blah. then when he got an interview with the police, well, they got an interview with him. They're just finding he was the one that found them. And one of the things he says is, I don't mind that my mom's is dead. I just don't like the way it went down. Red flag. What? What did you just say? And I'm sure he didn't mind that she was dead as much as he didn't like the fact that he had to kill her, probably. So I'm a red flag person. And then Peter Hyatt, who's worked with the police for many years, doing the statement analysis stuff. He's very, very, I just love his stuff. So check out Peter Hyatt's channel. And then Deception Detective is doing a kind of a different version of it, but goes through many clips of interest, people giving interesting statements during cases. And he focuses more on statements. And I think I like that. But there are signs of a psychopath, and he's got his new psychopathy cards, different things that are signs. And I haven't seen it yet, but it sounds cool. But do I believe in Robert Harris' psychopathy checklist? Absolutely. The top one to me is a lack of empathy. When you get to that total lack of empathy, you're probably a psychopath. And then you've got these other things, that you're a pathological liar, that people are either useful or in the way. Oh, that's not Harris. That's mine. People are either useful or in the way. For Chris Watts, his family was useful until he got bored with them, and then they were in the way. And so he eliminated them. So I have my own versions of a psychopathy checklist. But everybody has something to contribute, something we can consider. But so I do like Robert Harris' psychopathy checklist. I do like Deception Detectives concepts and Peter Hyatt's behavior panel. Sometimes I just think they get the way they look at things. To me, they go to the different four guys, and I don't know. I just end up disagreeing with them a lot. And sometimes I find what they're saying interesting, and I'm not saying they're always wrong. Sometimes I think, oh, that was really good. You really pointed out something I like. I think I like his point. I think the guy behind me right here, a lot of times he points out something really interesting. But please feel free to go to any channel. Be nice to all the channels. But hey, guys, over here, the Mccanns. Yeah. Okay. You need to actually look at the evidence. But by the way, Chris Watts is a psychopath. So that's my end thought. If you don't think Chris Watts is a psychopath and can't say that, come on now. Really? Anyway, thank you for being here. I am criminal profiler Pat Brown, and I will see what I come up with next time. I'm going to maybe talk about some similar stuff. Maybe. Bye.